Hello and welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. This is episode 602. I'm going to get used to the 600 bit. Anyway, I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility through this medium since 2005. So today, what I want to do is answer some more of your questions that came through for the 600th podcast episode. You guys were so thoughtful. And I know not everyone shared their email, so I can't send a thank you directly. But those of you who did share your email, I'm going to get a thank you note out to you shortly because I really appreciate you taking the time. You know, it's like filling out surveys, having just done one that took like 10 minutes for a conference I just completed. I mean, I know it's time consuming. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who was able to complete the survey for the 600th episode. And again, you guys had so many great questions. So as I mentioned, in the 600th, I said that, I didn't get to all the questions because there were so many good ones, and that I would be answering them in podcasts to come. So voila, here we are. And also, if you have questions that you would like answered or topics that you would like covered in this podcast, it really hones in so much on how do we find more tranquility in the everyday. And that's why I interview so many different authors and artists and activists. And, I always ask that question, how do you find tranquility in the everyday? And I encourage you to pause for a moment and really ask yourself that because sorry, Gizmo is quite loud to my right, so my apologies if he is dominating the airwaves. But, this is one of those things that I think is so important. We are about to move into spring in the Northern Hemisphere. Thank the Lord, because it has been a cold, dark winter. Not to go all Cinderella on you. Do you remember Cinderella and I think it was a long, hard winter? Anyway, I was a big Cinderella fan back in the day, so no judgment, but just noting that. But anyway, it's been hard, right? And so what I want to encourage through this podcast and really through this season and some things that I have coming up is how do we begin to bloom again? How do we come back alive, right? How do we even come more into ourselves? And that's through self-expression, self-care, etc. So just a little soapbox on that. And gentle reminders to subscribe to Tranquility du Jour in your favorite podcast app. Of course, there's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon. And if you have a moment to pin a review on Apple Podcast, I would be over the moon grateful. Send me a screenshot and I will send you a little snail mail that is a Paris postcard that I picked up in the Opera House when I was there last. And visit KimberlyWilson.com/podcast for more on the podcast and, of course, on the opportunity to get a darling little postcard because, let's be honest, who does not love snail mail? And those of you who are new to Tranquility du Jour, a big, big welcome. And you can find out more at KimberlyWilson.com/new. Also, I've added a ton of FAQs to the website, KimberlyWilson.com/FAQs. And take a peek at those and let me know if there's anything in there that I'm missing that you guys are curious about. And these are more like detail related, like how do I log into my account or what do I do if I lose my password? Things like that. But those of you who use the website fairly often, please take a peek and let me know if there's anything I'm missing or that you would like added. All right, upcoming events. I have 2 to mention. And then this is really it, at least that I've scheduled at this moment, until about July. Okay, so save the dates, April 1st. This is our TDJ style event, and I do these twice a year where I talk about building and creating a capsule wardrobe. And then if I have any new designs, I show them. Well, it just happens that I have about 12 new designs that are all part of the ballet core capsule. So I've been obsessed with ballet fashion since I was a child, like 5 years old, maybe. I'll have to actually post a photo of some of my ballet fashion back in the 70s, but I digress. So anyway, what I'm going to be doing with this collection is bringing to life ways in which we can wear ballet clothing, similar to what I used to do with yoga, but kind of at the bar, right? Or on the mat as I did with yoga, and then actually out and about also. So stay tuned for that. It's a free event, and there is a link in the show notes to join. Again, show notes can be found at kimberlywilson.com/602. Would love to have you there. And if you join live, you get some additional little perks, such as a discount and the ability to chat live with me afterwards if you have any specific style questions about the clothing line that I can answer for you. And then finally, April 15th, you guys, is our spring virtual retreat immersion. Now join the waitlist for this, because those of you who get on the waitlist, you're going to get a special notice this week that it's available, and you get a special bonus for being on the wait list. And the theme around this particular virtual retreat is, how do we go from blah to bloom, right? And it's for you if you are still exhausted from the holidays, if you are like wanting to come out of this cocoon of hibernation and maybe heaviness that you've been in, and you're seeking a way to do a little bit of internal spring cleaning as we move into this brand new season. It's a 2-hour live event, 1 hour pre-recorded. So it's a 3-hour half-day retreat. And again, would love to have you with us. You can find out more at kimberlywilson.com/virtual retreat. All right. So getting into your amazing questions. So one question that came up, and honestly comes up quite a bit, is around the hip replacement, which I had last July 2022, and it's around the recovery process. Well, I want to let you know that I have a podcast that will be releasing this spring where I talk with another person who went through a hip replacement just a few months before I did. And she's about 10 years older. And we talk about kind of the challenges involved in it, our experience with it, and more. And I hope it will be really informative to those of you who are quite curious about it. The one thing, too, that I want to say about this is, how long did it take to fully recover? Is, honey, I am still not recovered. The good news is I'm no longer bone on bone in my hip, right? Because I have a brand new sparkly hip. However, I am still in quite a bit of pain. I now have bursitis, whatever the heck that is. I didn't even know we had these bursas in all our joints. I'm still learning so much about the human body. I got a cortisone shot about 6 weeks ago, and we'll probably be getting another one. I'm back on anti-inflammatories, and yeah, just dealing honestly with a lot of pain back in PT, but it's a different kind of pain, right? So I'm not sure what it is, but it just seems like there's still a lot of inflammation in the hip. But I think my hip is happy to be new. It's just not quite, something's just not quite right. So I'm talking to multiple surgeons, trying to figure this out. In the interim, I continue to dance nearly every day. I am back on point. I'm pretty strong in that leg, all things considered, despite the fact you will often find me sitting on an ice pack or sometimes a heating pad. So I'll talk more about this in the upcoming podcast, but I just wanted to let you know kind of where everything is now. And I wish I could say it was a silver bullet and everything's better. And I really thought it was going to be. It definitely seemed like I was heading in that direction. But somehow things, and it wasn't like, oh, something happened, I fell or anything like that. It just has not quite gotten fully right. So TBD. The other question that I loved, and again, I've got this massive list of it, you guys. So I will be answering these more and more kind of over the next few months. But this is, what is your best tip for learning to deal with life's little upsets and changes in plans without falling apart? Oh my gosh. I love this question. I think it's so good. And I feel like I could do a podcast series on this. But let me just start by giving a couple of tips and a couple things that I find really helpful. Again, because this year in particular has been quite challenging so far, right? From loss to just dealing with exhaustion to migraines, lots and lots of migraines, to this hip not healing. And yet there's been so many wonderful, wonderful things, right? So I like to try to stay focused on those. But when there are these upsets, when there's these things where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is a little thing, but flight's delayed, right? Or I cannot believe my friend was just diagnosed with cancer and given 2 weeks to live, right? You're just like, what? How do you even go about processing and digesting that? And so the thing that I found that is most helpful for me is really to get quiet. And I like a lot of alone time. And so I remember in particular that weekend where I got the news about my friend, our family friend, I was in a state of just like massive overwhelm. And I never, ever say this to people, but I said it to my mom and a couple of close friends. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like hanging on by a thread. I'm just so exhausted. Then we get this news and I'm like, okay, my hanging on by a thread is like nothing, right? Compared to life or death, right? This situation that happened. Somehow that really kind of like got me going again, of just like recognizing what's important. And I stopped just feeling so, granted, I was still in a state of overwhelm, but I think my focus shifted from my overwhelm into like, oh my gosh, okay, I need to book a flight, XYZ, reach out to his family, like all of this sort of stuff, right? So when those things happen, I do feel like we can, sometimes it can just be like, oh my gosh, I can't take this. This is too much. But somehow in crisis, I tend to do fairly well of just like being level headed and being like, okay, so what do we need to do now? How do we move forward? Okay, I need to book a flight. I need to reach out to his family. I need to do XYZ, right? I need to just prioritize what the week's going to look like. And I need to do some rescheduling to fit this unplanned, and okay, I'm flying there now sort of experience into my week. And so, that's what I would say is like when these little things like a flight cancellation, okay, which I know I'm making that sound little and it can be a really big deal, particularly if you need to get somewhere. But, like a metro train or a subway train being delayed, right? Those are life's little upsets. They're like annoying, right? But how do we recognize, and this, I think, was really important during the pandemic, how do we recognize what we have control over? Okay, I have control over the fact that I'm feeling exhausted, and I have been for a few weeks, and I need to really focus in on rest. I need to take baths. I need to take good care of myself. So I remember that weekend I went up, I got a vegan cupcake and I ordered in from my favorite vegan restaurant, and I was just like, okay, self-care, self-care, self-care. I also recognize, it's like, okay, what do I have control over? Okay, I have control over rescheduling, what's on my planner, making some cancellations, trying to get, things that I already had scheduled, kind of rescheduled, and, hopping on a flight, right? So there are just, in times like that, it's like, okay, what do I have control over? I cannot control the cancer. I cannot control the fact that I'm operating at a level of depletion, right? But what I can do is I can work to replenish, and I can also work to focus on what is most important in this moment. Now, that is very heady, right? And oftentimes when we're in crisis or we're in overwhelm or we get news that somebody has two freaking weeks to live. You guys, that's insanity, right? It's just like, what? It's hard to even wrap your head around something like that. And he wasn't sick before he got that news, right? So it's just like, what in the world? It really puts things in perspective. But it's in those moments, right? You're so overwhelmed. So you're feeling it in your body. You're in a fight or flight mode. When you're overwhelmed, you're just exhausted. You're sluggish. You just, it's just hard, right? Everything's hard. And so, I think it's really important to feel into your body, notice what's happening. Wow, my heart's racing, or, oh my gosh, I just do not have the energy to get going right now, or, oh, I need quiet, whatever it might be. And then to get a little heady. Okay, what's the next best step that I can do right now? So the thing that I just want to say as I leave this question is best tip for dealing with life's upsets and changes in plans without falling apart is 1, tune into that freaking body. You guys, it has so much to say. Feel your feelings, notice what's coming up, do some breathing. Do whatever it is that's grounding. Again, to me, it's a bathtub. I'm always soaking in the tub. I just find it so therapeutic. So whatever your thing may be, going into that and then getting heady, right? Getting into your head and be like, okay, what do I have control over? What can I do? Where can I go from here? What's the next best step? So I hope that's helpful as you think about how to deal with life's upsets and changes in plans without falling apart. And just coming back to the delayed flight example, it's rare that I have a delayed flight, but it's happened, 20-ish% of the time. And I always find it interesting. I just kind of watch, people melting around me and so upset. And I get it. I mean, especially if you need to get to a funeral or a wedding or, there's things happening that are just really important that you needed to make that flight. I totally get it. But it's just so interesting to observe the acting out that happens, right? From the yelling at the person at the counter to, kicking the trash can, the things you see adults doing. And it's like, wow, I just think, if only there was a little more emotional regulation of the ability to calm yourself, right? Check in with yourself. What do I need in this moment? I'm going to go get some fries, right? Or I'm going to go sit at a bar, have some tea or a glass of wine and read my book and then get on the next flight. Whatever it is, it just allows you to deal with these upsets without it taking over and taking control. Not easy, but it is a very, very, very important skill set, right? Coping mechanism to deal with everything that our beautiful lives throw at us. Okay, this is a great question too. What is the one thing you've implemented in your life that has most helped you live a life in line with your dreams? Now, the one thing I'll say here is I'm a ridiculous planner. And I think most of you know that if you've followed for just even a little bit of time, but I know many of you have been around for years. And so, the biggest thing for me, I would say, is I write everything down. Even, of course, I have my planner, right, where I have everything listed, but sometimes the weekends kind of must-dos are so long that then I pull them over into a little spiral 4x6 notebook so that I can really see it all laid out, so it's funny. It's how many lists does one need? But I find it really comforting. Now, of course, for others, you may find other practices to be comforting to help you move toward your dreams. But I will say, rather than just keeping the ideas in my head, okay, work on table of contents. Today was podcast and love note because I will be opening the virtual retreat next week and I want to send a little bit of inspiration, coming off of 4 days of a psychotherapy conference. I want to get my point classes scheduled because I really want to work towards wearing a pink tutu in the upcoming adult ballet festival that's happening in Miami, and I'm working on my solo for it, and I'd like to do some point in that. So, it's just these sorts of things, right? So I don't just sit and think, oh, I'd really like to do point again. I'm like, no, let me get some classes lined up. Let me reach out to some teachers. Let me make this happen. And so that, as I would say, has been the one thing that I've implemented in my life that has made the most difference. So, every week I sit down, and it's usually Sunday, or I sit down and I get the week's all the MITs and the appointments, and appointments are typically in there, right? But if I want to add a few things, and then also I'll move over the things that didn't happen from the week before. And I'll give an example. One thing that's been on my, in my planner, for the past 4 weeks is repot plant. I have to get soil, right? So I need to get soil so that then I can repot my plants. So, there's things like that that just get pulled over constantly. But then there's other things like work on the workbook, right? For the upcoming April 1st ballet corps launch. And I'm really trying to make it very sweet and has a lot of ballet centric or mindful movement stuff incorporated, because I want it to be a really useful tool for you. And, so there's things along those lines, right? And then everything for my therapy clients, and then also everything for my pugs. And, there's just so much that goes into it. But I will say the one thing is just getting it all down and laid out for the week, where it's visual. I need to see things. I like to highlight in pink my ballet classes. I'll go through if I really want to make sure that I get something done. I put a little star and a circle by it. Unnecessary, but it just helps me hone in on priorities. So, thinking about for you, what would be the one thing that if you implemented in your life, it would help you live more in lines with, this question was dreams, but maybe it's values. Maybe it's how you want to spend your time and energy, which is something I am always reevaluating. And asking yourself, does it look like my time and energy are being utilized in a way that is serving me and my family and my community the most, right? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe you're in a season where you're I'm barely getting by. I'm barely hanging on. It's enough that I'm getting up and going about my day. And that's fine, right? So what we want to focus on there is how do we get back in alignment so that the self-care is fully flowing and allowing you to show up fully and authentically as you would like to, so that you can in turn move toward your dreams. I also, at the beginning of the year, I'll write kind of my dreams for that year. And then I try to look back on them regularly so that they filter into my monthly dreams and then my weekly most important tasks, MITs. So I hope that's helpful as you think about, right, for your own life and what could be most helpful for you to keep those dreams kind of front of mind. Because, sometimes it's I'll get to it once I just get, X done, right? Maybe it's some huge project at work, or your child to a certain age, or, your puppy into less chaos hood. And it's just what is it that you could even be doing now, even though it might not be the full shebang moving towards your dream, but it gives you a little taste of, okay, I spent 5 minutes at the ballet bar. I spent 5 minutes stretching on the yoga mat. I spent 5 minutes writing down some ideas for an upcoming novel, right? So 5 minutes is better than 0 minutes. All right. And one more question that I wanted to touch on, which I'm excited about. I love the question is, what are you most excited to learn about as you go forward or revisit? So for me, I would say the thing I'm most excited to learn about as I go forward is helping women thrive in midlife. That includes me, right? So I'm very interested in how midlife is it's such a special time and a challenging time, but also a time of reevaluation. It's when you recognize I have lived more years than I'm probably gonna live. Somehow it puts things in perspective in a different way. And I do think that women in midlife, we are challenged in ways that are different than when we're in our 20s or when we're in our 80s. And I also think we have a lot of hope and possibility and opportunity and adventures ahead of us. And so I think that's what I'm most excited to learn For example, before I started recording for this podcast, I signed up for a workshop on menopause and mental health that's happening in April here in the Washington, D.C. area. It's a Zoom workshop, like all day. And, I know very little really about menopause, but what I am interested in is just how this affects our mental health overall. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I think you're going to notice a transition that is just like, I don't have like any grand plans, but that I'm kind of chewing on of how to really support and focus on midlife women. Now, it doesn't mean millennials or, kind of what we call boomers or others cannot benefit or learn, from the work of Tranquility du Jour. But it really is like, how do I hone in on us like Gen Xers, right? Who are really trying to find our way at this point, and also exploring how to express ourselves when I feel like, to a degree, that we have been, as women, silenced in quite a few ways. So, and continuing to be. So anyway, just some thoughts there. And that's what I'm really excited about. Also learning more about ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy, bringing that into my work. And IFS, which is internal family systems, bringing that into my work with clients. And and I would say those are really kind of my big things as I think of future work. I think midlife, I think deepening my work as a therapist, and I think how to be the best pug mama, as you hear him over here breathing heavy and dreaming. And really too, the work of Pigs and Pugs Project, I think I know it means so much to me. And I really, really love being able to support pigs and pugs and needs through that. So, and your support actually goes towards that. So I want to thank you for your support also. But that was what I would say is I feel like that I'm most excited about as I go forward. I mean, I'm turning 50 this year, which is like oddly exciting. I'm not like upset about it or concerned about it at all. I'm like, I kind of feel like it's like, it's a big deal, right? But in a fun way. I see it as a fun experience that I'm incredibly grateful for. So I hope this is helpful as you think about, right, in your own life, your best ways in dealing with life's upsets, which, let's be honest, there are a lot constantly. And the one thing that I've implemented in my life, I hope too, is you think about, okay, what have you implemented in your life that helps you live more in alignment with your dreams? And what are you excited about? I'm just going to turn this around on you, right? What are you most excited about as you move forward? You want to learn, you want to infuse, you want to experience. So thank you as always for tuning in. A gentle reminder that I send love notes, and I have one coming out this week. And you can sign up for those at KimberlyWilson.com/love-notes. There's also a link to my 6 books and planners, I guess I should say, because I have 2 of them. And then also, I put out videos on occasion that would love for you to have a peek at. And those are over on YouTube. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram. And those of you who are there love seeing you and appreciate you commenting or sharing notes in the DMs, etc. And then there's a link to my seasonless, locally sewn, eco-friendly fashion line, TDJ. And again, we have our event on April 1st. If you have a moment to, again, share a review on Apple Podcasts or Amazon or Goodreads about any of my books, I would be over the moon grateful. So thank you as always for tuning in. It means the world. And I wish you a delicious, delightful, nourishing week ahead.